She was Nira Wraithborne, the forgotten Omega, the dirt beneath the boots of the Crimson Howl Pack. They had thrown her into a killing storm, a blizzard so merciless it could skin flesh from bone, sending her to die like trash on a fool's errand. But out there, 6 miles from safety, swallowed by a white void, she found him a massive black wolf, poisoned and fading, the stench of Silverbane and dark power thick around him. Every rule screamed for her to leave him. Every instinct urged her to run. Instead, she shouldered the weight of the dying beast, step by punishing step, dragging him through the storm. She thought she was saving a rogue. She didn't know she was carrying Kael Dravenmoor, the Alpha King, the one destined to claim her under the blood moon. Outside, the wind shrieked like a dying spirit around the stronghold of the Crimson Howl Pack. It was the worst storm the Northridge peaks had seen in 10 years. A white-fanged monster sent it, seen by Seren Alindra, the moon goddess herself, to test their strength. For most of the pack, the blizzard meant firelight, warm meat, and safety by the hearth. For Nira Wraithborne, it meant a death sentence. Omega. The voice of Luna Solara Veinecrest sliced through the grand hall like a blade of ice. Nira flinched, dropping the silver tray she had been polishing. It clattered across the stone floor, echoing her insignificance. She was 22, and for as long as she could remember, she had been nothing but Omega. Not Nira. Not a name, just a rank. Last to eat, last to speak, last to matter. Her wolf was small, pale gray. Weak, it hadn't even surfaced until she turned 18. A pitiful contrast to the towering, proud wolves of her pack. She was the runt, the reminder of frailty that the Luna despised. Yes, Luna, Nira murmured, crouching, low eyes fixed on the ground. Solara drifted closer, her crimson gown slicing through the room's earthy tones, beauty wrapped in venom. Her golden hair gleamed like sunlight on a blade, her eyes sharp and glacial. She smiled, but her voice dripped with false sweetness. Alpha Riven is concerned about the snares on the East Ridge, Solara said. With this storm, they may have collapsed. We can't afford to lose even one. Nira's blood froze. The East Ridge, 6 miles away, buried in blizzard. No sane wolf would go. It wasn't an assignment. It was an execution. Luna. The storm, Nira began, voice trembling. The rules. Solara snapped, mask of gentleness falling away. The Alpha's word is law. She kicked the fallen tray, the silver edge, striking Nira's shins. And my word, she hissed, is his. Her lips twisted in mock delight. Are you disobeying a direct command, Omega? From the fireside, Alpha Riven. Duskbane watched in silence, his hulking frame wrapped in dark fur eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. He lived for his Luna's games. Is there a problem, Nira? He asked softly, using her name not out of respect, but as a threat. No, Alpha, she whispered, hollow as the winter wind. Good. Solara's smile was all teeth. And don't bother shifting. That pathetic little wolf of yours will freeze before you reach a mile. At least your human form can hold a lantern. Laughter rippled from the watching pack members as Nira backed out of the hall. She grabbed her threadbare cloak, the only one she owned, along with a lantern and a small pouch of herbs. They were useless against such cold, but they were all she had. When she pushed open the oak doors, the storm slammed into her like a living beast. Wind ripped the breath from her lungs. Snow and ice clawed at her face. The door shut behind her with the weight of a tomb. She knew what this was. Solara hated her, always had. Maybe because, despite everything, Nira refused to break. Or maybe because the visiting beta from the Silvercrest pack, a wolf named Oren Veilheart, had once complimented her quiet diligence, and Solara had seen it. The reason didn't matter. The result was the same. They had sent her out to die, head bowed. Nira pushed into the storm, her lantern a flickering dot in the chaos. She had no intention of checking snares, only of finding shelter. A hollow tree, a shallow cave, and anything to survive a few more hours. or at least die unseen. She walked for what felt like hours, the cold chewing through her flesh, her blood thickening to ice. Her fingers were claws of numbness around the lantern handle. Her feet were ghosts beneath her. So this was how it ended, not in battle, not in glory, but as waste discarded by her own pack. She stumbled and fell face first into a drift. The lantern sputtered, hissed and went dark. The world turned black. Snow began to bury her. The wind quieted. The cold faded into a soft, sleepy warmth. Maybe she could just rest, just for a moment. But then something tore through the stillness, a scent. Wrong. Out of place. Not pine, not frost. Metallic. Copper. Rot. Silverbane. The realization jolted her awake. A poison outlawed by every pack, lethal to wolves, cruel in its slow destruction. And beneath it, another scent, electric, ancient, raw. Power. Someone was out here. Someone was dying. Nira forced her limbs to move, screaming, as sensation returned like knives under her skin. Crawling through the storm, she followed the scent. She found him 20 yards later. A massive black wolf collapsed beneath a frozen waterfall. A shadow sprawled in the snow. His fur, dark as midnight, was crusted with ice and blood. His body trembled with fever and his muzzle frothed with poison. He was enormous, easily twice the size of Riven Duskbane. Not a rogue, not ordinary. Power radiated from him, suffocating even in weakness. A king's power. His breathing was ragged, each exhale a wet rattle. The tang of Silverbane burned her throat. Whoever had done this wanted him to suffer, to die slowly. Pack law was clear, a wounded lone wolf was a threat. She should leave him, or if she had the strength, end him. But when his eyes opened deep molten amber, she froze. There was no fear in them, only fury, and beneath it, something fragile. He was trapped in his wolf form, unable to shift the poison, holding him hostage in his own body. In that moment, Nira didn't see an enemy. She saw herself abandoned, unwanted, dying alone in the cold. "They left you too," she whispered into the storm. And against every law, every fear, she reached out and touched him. In that moment, Nira Wraithborne didn't see a threat. She didn't see a rogue or even an alpha. She saw herself a creature left behind, abandoned to the mercy of a world that had long stopped caring. "They left you too," she whispered, her voice swallowed by the storm. Her trembling hand brushed the wolf's side. His fur was matted with ice and blood, his skin burning with fever, even as his paws froze solid. He didn't have much time. I can't just leave you here." She had to get him to shelter anywhere out of this hell. But the main house of the Crimson Howl Pack was 6 miles behind her. If she brought him there, they'd kill him on sight, and her too. Then she remembered her small forgotten quarters, a servant's shed built into the hillside about a mile from the main lodge. A place no one ever went. Her place. Tiny but made of stone, with a hearth that might still hold warmth. It was hope, fragile but real. She stared at the enormous wolf. He was all muscle and weight, easily 3 times her size. She was a frail human girl, with frostbitten hands. "I'll have to shift," she decided. "Maybe my wolf can help." Her frozen fingers fumbled at the cloak's clasp. She stripped it off, breath ragged in the biting cold. Focusing inward, she called the gray wolf she so often despised. The transformation tore through her bones, cracking skin, splitting fur, forcing its way through. It wasn't the elegant shift of the highborn wolves. It was agony. When it ended, a small shivering gray wolf stood in the blizzard. She nudged the black giant's muzzle. He gave a faint, pained huff, alive, but barely. He couldn't move. Her wolf form was too weak to drag him. She shifted back, gasping as the cold sliced into her bare skin. Her body shook violently. Tears froze on her lashes. "It's not fair," she whimpered through chattering teeth. Then something inside her hardened. She ripped her cloak into strips with her teeth, her bleeding hands shaking. She knotted them together into a crude rope, looped it beneath his massive chest, and braced herself. With a cry that tore from the deepest part of her soul, she pulled. He didn't move, not an inch. "No," she snarled into the storm, voice breaking. "I am not dying here, and neither are you." She wrapped the rope around her waist, planted her boots deep in the snow, and leaned forward with every ounce of strength she had left. The muscles in her back screamed, and then the wolf shifted just barely. An inch, but enough. Her lungs burned, her heart hammered. She looked toward the ridge. 6 miles. 6 endless miles. But her small den was closer west of here, maybe 2 miles. No, her sense of direction twisted. She realized she'd wandered in circles, lost for hours. The East Ridge. The traps. She wasn't closer at all. She was 6 full miles from safety. A hollow, bitter despair flooded her. 6 miles dragging a dying wolf heavier than 3 men through a blizzard that wanted them both dead. She tilted her face to the sky, snow biting her skin. "Seren Alindra, if you have mercy, strike me down now. If not, give me the strength I don't have." A low groan answered her prayer. The massive wolf lifted his amber eyes, glowing faintly, even through the storm. In them she saw gratitude, the first kindness she had witnessed in 10 long years. She tightened the rope around her waist. "Okay," she panted, breath fogging the air. "Okay. We walk." Her scream was lost in the wind as she heaved forward. Her legs trembled, her body protested with every step. The first mile was pure pain, adrenaline and agony. The second was raw survival. By the third, she was no longer human. She was instinct grit and frozen nerve, a machine dragging a mountain through hell. The blizzard fought her like a living thing, clawing her face, pushing her backward, screaming in triumph when she stumbled. Snow sucked at the wolf's body, anchoring him down. Every step was a battle. The first time she fell, she hit hard breath, knocked out of her lungs. The wolf's weight crushed her leg. She screamed in pain and lay still, the storm howling around her. "It's over," she thought. "I've failed." But then warmth. His fever radiated through the snow, a furnace against her frozen body. The same heat keeping him alive was keeping her from turning to ice. He was her anchor, her fire. "Get up, Nira," she hissed through gritted teeth. "Get up." She dragged herself to her feet, gripping the rope. In her mind she saw riven duskbanes, cold smirk, Solara vein crests, mocking eyes. She heard their laughter, the bets whispered about how long she'd survive. "You want me dead," she growled. "You want me weak. You think I'll break." Her rage ignited, burning hotter than the frost. "I will not be what you call me." She pulled harder. The wolf was her secret now, her rebellion. If she saved him, she'd prove them wrong. The 4th mile blurred into delirium. She lost feeling in her hands and feet. Her cloak was torn to ribbons. Her skin was raw, bleeding, crusted in ice. The wolf had gone still, no more shivering. A terrible sign. She stopped every few minutes, pressing her ear to his flank, praying for the faint thud of a heartbeat. "Hold on," she begged him. "You don't get to die now, you stubborn giant. Not after all this." By the 5th mile, she was hallucinating. The snow twisted into faces, her pack watching her with empty eyes. Then her mother's voice, Lyra Dawnsong, gentle, distant. "It's warm, Nira. Just rest." "No," she muttered. "He's too heavy. Can't rest." She stumbled and fell again, this time into a drift that swallowed her whole. Snow poured around her, crushing, trapping. Panic sliced through her delirium. "This is it." Then a growl, faint, ragged but real. The black wolf's eyes were open, weak but alive. With the last of his strength, he shifted his weight, rolling just enough to give her leverage. He was helping her. That small broken movement freed them both. She crawled out, dragging him after her with renewed desperation. By the 6th mile she was crawling. Her hands and knees left bloody prints in the snow. Her body was gone, her mind burned away, only will remained. Then she saw it. The ridge. The faint curl of chimney smoke through the storm. Her den. 50 more feet. She didn't walk them. She fell, fell again, dragging both their lives through the last stretch of hell. She fell. Pulled. Fell again. Pulled harder. Again. Her hand finally struck rough wood, the door to her den. A strangled sob tore from Nira Wraithborne's throat. She clawed at the latch with hands stiff as stone. It gave way, and she collapsed inside, dragging the massive black wolf with her. Using the last flicker of strength she had, she kicked the door shut. Darkness swallowed them. For a long moment, all she could hear was the storm screaming outside, and the jagged rhythm of her own breath. She had done it. 6 miles through hell, Nira crawled toward the hearth, her numb fingers fumbling for flint and steel. One spark. Another. A tiny flame caught on the kindling. The small room filled with a trembling orange glow. Her eyes found him, the wolf, enormous and still. His breath shallow but present. He was alive, barely. Now came the hard part, the poison. The den was small, carved into the hillside. In one corner lay a straw pallet and threadbare blankets. In another, a hidden cache of herbs. No one else came here. No one cared enough to. She had learned to heal herself because no one ever would. Dragging him closer to the fire, Nira bit down on a cry as pain flared through her torn palms. Her skin was split and bleeding. Frostbite had turned her fingers gray. She ignored it. Silverbane, she murmured, studying the dark foam at his muzzle. It was death in liquid form. Her grandmother's voice whispered in memory, Maven Stormvale, the old healer who had raised her in secret after her mother's death. There is no cure, child, but there is a counter, enough to fight the darkness if the spirit is strong. Nira grabbed her pouch yarrow to slow internal bleeding, willow bark for the fever, and most precious shadow root, a black root that grew only in caves where sunlight never touched. It wouldn't cure Silverbane, but it could buy time. He was too weak to swallow. She chewed the herbs herself, grinding them into a bitter, burning paste. And Omega's work unseen, thankless, desperate. "Come on," she whispered. She forced open his jaws. Gods! His fangs were the length of her palm, and shoved the medicine down his throat. He convulsed, a low growl rumbling from his chest. Black blood spilled from his lips, hissing on the floor. "No," she grunted, holding his massive head steady. "You swallow it. You live." For an hour it was a brutal struggle, a 110-pound Omega wrestling a dying Alpha who outweighed her threefold. His body fought her even in unconsciousness, but slowly the tremors eased. The ragged breathing steadied. The fever didn't fade, but it stopped rising. For now he was alive. Nira collapsed against the wall, watching him through the flicker of firelight. He was magnificent, even dying, the kind of strength that commanded obedience by existence alone. Who was he? What kind of power did he hold? And what enemy hated him enough to use Silverbane? Steam began to rise from his body as the fire warmed him, then movement, not sudden but slow, agonized. His bones lengthened. Fur receded. The great beast melted into human form. Nira froze, her heart pounding. The transformation was tortured, the poison fighting every inch of it. When it ended, a man lay before her, naked, scarred. He was built like war itself, muscle-bound, broad-shouldered, his skin marred by 100 old wounds. His hair was dark, tangled with snow and blood, his jaw rough with stubble. Even unconscious, his presence was suffocating. He wasn't just strong. He was dominance. Nira quickly tore strips of cloth to bind her bleeding hands, her mind spinning. She had just dragged a poisoned stranger, a man who radiated power 6 miles through a blizzard, to her private den. Solara Vaincrest hadn't merely sent her to die. She had sent her to break every law that bound an Omega's life. A heavy knock made her jump. "Omega." The voice outside was male, sharp and commanding. "Open this door." By order of Alpha Riven. Her stomach dropped. Corvin Ashmark, Riven's son, the pack's beta. There was nowhere to hide the man. The den was one room. The scent of Silverbane and shifting flesh hung heavy. The door burst open. Corvin filled the frame, snow swirling around him, his expression one of cruel delight. "So the little rat survived," he sneered. "Father owes me 5 silver. But his words cut off when he saw the body on the floor, the enormous, unconscious stranger beside her fire. His eyes went wide, then narrowed to slits. "A rogue," he spat, hand going to his knife. "You brought a rogue here. You're a traitor, Omega." "He's poisoned," Nira shouted, staggering to her feet. "He'll die out there." Corvin stepped forward, fury twisting his features. "He's an alpha, and he's infected with Silverbane. If he crossed into our land, he's an enemy." He sniffed the air and froze. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by disbelief. "I know him," he breathed. "From the conclave 2 years ago." That's his eyes widened. "No. That's impossible. Who is he?" Nira demanded. Corvin ignored her. His lips curled into a greedy smile. "This is a gift from the goddess," he murmured. "If I kill him here and blame the storm my father—" His knife flashed. But he didn't aim for the man. He lunged at her. Nira screamed, throwing up her arms, but the blade never struck. A hand fast as lightning shot out and caught Corvin's wrist mid-air. The sound of bones snapping echoed through the small room. Corvin howled in agony. The stranger was awake. He rose in one smooth motion, towering, unsteady, but terrifying. Poison still burned in his veins, yet the sheer power radiating off him was like gravity. "You will not touch her," he growled, voice deep, commanding final. It wasn't a warning. It was a law. Corvin's face went pale. You're not Jareth." "No," the man said, shoving him backward into the wall with effortless force. "I'm not." His gaze flicked to Nira, to the blood on her hands, the herbs scattered on the floor, the ropes torn from her struggle. Then back to the beta, trembling in the corner. "My name," he said quietly, "is Kael Dravenmoor." The knife fell from Corvin's hand. His breath hitched. The Alpha King," he whispered, terror flooding his eyes. Silence fell heavy, absolute, broken only by the storm's wail beyond the walls. The Alpha King. The name itself was legend, a phantom ruler from the sunlit south, lord of every pack across the continent. He didn't come north. He didn't bleed. He didn't fall. But as Nira looked at him, scarred, poisoned, burning, with an otherworldly authority, she knew it was true. This was no myth. This was the apex of their kind, the King of Kings bleeding and alive in her den. He was pale, but his amber eyes were alive with fire. Kael Dravenmoor stood tall despite the poison burning through him, his voice low and sharp as a blade. "The beta of the Crimson Howl Pack," he said. Gaze locked on the trembling man, clutching his broken wrist. "Corvin Ashmark, your father Riven Duskbane, was expecting me for a surprise inspection tomorrow. My king." "I didn't know," Corvin stammered. Kael's head tilted slightly, danger coiling in his tone. "Didn't know," he repeated softly. "Or didn't care." His voice deepened, carrying the weight of an alpha's wrath. "You recognized me. You called me Jareth, my most trusted guard, my decoy. But Jareth is safe in my winter stronghold. You, however, knew what I truly look like. You knew the scent of the Silverbane your pack brews." Corvin froze, color draining from his face. We would never silence." The single word hit like thunder. It wasn't shouted yet. The sheer dominance in Kael's voice slammed Corvin back against the wall. His breath caught as though invisible claws pinned him there. Then Kael turned his gaze toward Nira Wraithborne. She was still by the fire, trembling small and half hidden behind him. The fury in his face softened just slightly, replaced by something bewildered, raw. "You," he rasped. "Who are you?" I'm Nira Wraithborne, my king," she whispered instinctively, dropping into the submissive crouch of an Omega. "I'm the Omega." Kael's brow furrowed. His eyes flicked over her bandaged hands, the pouch of herbs, the shredded cloak turned rope. "An Omega carried me 6 miles. I found you in the snow." "You were poisoned," she said, shakily. "Riven Duskbane and Solara Veinecrest sent you out there," he said quietly, not as a question but a fact. "They sent you to die, a convenient witness to vanish. I was sent to check the traps, my king," she murmured. "There are no traps on the East Ridge," Kael replied, voice flat and cold. "Not for animals, anyway. That's where I was meant to meet a loyal contact, someone ready to expose your alpha's treason." He glanced at Corvin. "It seems the trap was for me, and you little wolf were the bait they never planned to retrieve." The realization struck Nira like lightning, the errand, the storm, the timing. Solara and Riven hadn't just been cruel. They had plotted treason. They had poisoned the Alpha King and sent her to die to erase the only witness. Kael straightened, steadying himself against the wall. His body trembled, but his will was carved from steel. "Corvin," he ordered, "you will take me to the pack house. Now." "My king, the storm," Corvin began. That Kael cut in his tone glacial was not a request. He turned to Nira and held out a hand. "You Omega will come with me." "Me," she whispered, heartbeat pounding in her chest. "To the pack house," he said firmly. "Riven Duskbane will do nothing." For the first time she saw something behind the king's hardened exterior: exhaustion, pain, and gratitude. "You saved my life. You faced the storm and the poison. I will not leave you behind to be slaughtered by the vermin I am about to burn out." He tore a strip of dry lining from her frozen cloak and wrapped it around his waist. Then his gaze slid back to Corvin. "Your coat. Now. My king, I'll freeze." Kael didn't move, didn't blink. The silence was more dangerous than any roar. Corvin swallowed hard, ripping off his thick, fur-lined coat. But instead of wearing it, Kael turned and draped it over Nira's shoulders. It swallowed her completely, the warmth foreign and heavy. "No one," Kael said quietly, "a vow, carved in steel, will ever send you into the cold again." He gripped Corvin by the front of his tunic and hauled him up. "Led the way, and pray, Beta. Pray your goddess shows you more mercy than I will." He shoved Corvin out into the storm. With a steadying hand on Nira's back, the Alpha King followed her into the blizzard. The mile-long march back was another kind of nightmare. The storm still screamed, but it bent around Kael Dravenmoor's presence like even nature dared not touch him. Every step radiated power restrained only by will. Nira stayed close beside him, half-dragged, half-guided, the warmth of Corvin's coat, her only shield. By the time they reached the great wooden doors of the pack hall, Kael's body was trembling from exhaustion, but his command remained absolute. He didn't knock. He kicked the doors open. The thunderous crack silenced everything. Music died. Laughter froze. 100 wolves stared mid-feast as the blizzard poured in behind them. At the head of the room sat Alpha Riven Duskbane and Luna Solara Veinecrest, their smug composure splintering at the sight. Solara's lips parted in shocked disbelief, twisting her perfect face. "You! How dare you!" Her words choked off when Kael stepped through the doorway, dragging Corvin and the storm itself with him. The scent of dominance, raw and ancient, swept through the hall like wildfire. Every wolf in the room felt it, the pull of submission. Even Riven. Kael Dravenmoor was no rogue alpha. He was the king. Alpha Riven Duskbane. Kael's voice rolled through the hall low and thunderous. He was bare-chested pale, his skin slick with melting snow. Yet he radiated such power that the air itself seemed to bow. Riven stumbled to his feet. "My king, we were not expecting you until tomorrow." He stopped when his gaze fell on his broken son. He saw the fury in Kael's eyes, and he knew. "You expected me at the East Ridge," Kael said, stalking forward with Nira at his side. "You expected me to meet your contact. You expected me to drink your poisoned wine and die in the snow, a convenient tragedy of the northern wilds." Solara shrieked desperation, slicing through her voice. Treason. It was her. She pointed at Nira, trembling with rage. "The Omega brought this stranger here. She poisoned him. She's the traitor." The pack stirred, eyes snapping toward Nira. Contempt now mixed with fear. Kael roared, his voice shaking. "The hall is the only reason I still breathe." The sound of his fury drove half the pack to their knees. "This Omega, the one you cast out, dragged me 6 miles through your storm after your assassins filled my veins with Silverbane. She used her own hands to fight the poison you crafted. This worthless Omega carries more loyalty in her blood than your entire pack combined." He strode up the platform, towering over Riven and Solara. They had been masters of this hall moments ago. Now they looked like children cornered by a god. "I have questions," Kael growled. "Who administered the poison?" Riven's face blanched. He trembled, glancing at Solara, but Solara, always the viper, struck first. "It was him," she screamed, pointing a shaking hand at her mate. Riven plotted with the Bloodveil sect. He said the king had grown weak, that the North should rule itself. He made me do it. He forced me. He held my family hostage. He made me poison the cup." Riven Duskbane stared at his mate in disbelief, his face pale with shock. "Solara, no." But the Luna was already on her knees. Before Kael Dravenmoor, her golden hair cascading over crimson silk. "He did it," she sobbed. "I swear, my king, I am loyal. I tried to send the Omega to warn someone, but he controls everything. Please, my king." Mercy. It was a desperate performance, clever practiced and poisonous. Nira Wraithborne watched, sickened. This was the same woman who had sent her into the blizzard, to die without hesitation, now trembling like a wounded saint. Kael stood silent, his face unreadable. For a long, agonizing moment, no one breathed. Then unexpectedly he laughed. It was cold, sharp, and merciless. "A fine act, Luna Solara," he said, his tone cutting through the tension like a blade. "Truly convincing. You almost fooled me." He turned to the gathered wolves. "She is right about one thing. Your Alpha is a traitor. He has conspired with the Bloodveil sect." He looked back at Solara, his amber eyes glittering with dark amusement. "But she left out the best part. The man you poisoned," he said. Voice dropping to a dangerous murmur, "Wasn't me." The hall froze. Solara's breath caught mid-sob. "What, the wolf you found in the woods, the one dosed with Silverbane, that was Jareth Holofin. My most loyal guard, my decoy. He is immune to the toxin. It weakens him, yes, but it cannot kill him. A clever trap, wouldn't you say? I watched your assassins flee. I tracked them back here." Nira's stomach turned. He's lying. She remembered the icy sweat on his skin, the fading pulse under her palms, the poison she had sucked from his wound. It had been him. So why was he rewriting the story? Solara's expression flickered with brief naked relief. If she had poisoned only a guard, she might still survive this. But Kael wasn't finished. His voice grew colder. The blizzard hit soon after. "And then your second trap, a silver-laced perimeter wire designed for me. It caught me, wounded me. I was bleeding and alone in the storm." He stepped toward Riven Duskbane, each word a hammer. "I was dying not by your poison, but by your cowardice." His gaze locked on Riven. "And do you know who found me?" He pointed not at Nira, but at Corvin Ashmark. "Your son. He found his king, half dead, and instead of helping me, he drew his blade to finish the job. No, father. No, Corvin cried, falling to his knees, his voice breaking. Kael had just sentenced him, but the lie flowed smooth as silk. He's twisting it, Nira realized. He's protecting something. But what Kael continued, his tone calm and deadly. But as he raised his knife, someone else appeared. You're Omega Nira Wraithborne, the one you sent to die. She stumbled into the storm. And she attacked your beta. Gasps rippled through the pack. She threw herself between us, Kael said, weaving his tail like a wolf spins its snare. That is when I saw the truth, your treachery, your ambition, your lies. A nest of vipers. It's a lie, Riven roared, fury igniting. He's weak, the poison broke him. Kill him, he's no true king. Kill him and we'll be free. The alpha lunged his body, tearing into the shape of a massive brown wolf mid-air. But Kael didn't shift. He didn't need to. He caught the charging beast by the throat with one hand. The hall rang with the sickening crack of crushing bone. The Alpha King lifted the 400-pound wolf, effortlessly, golden fire burning in his eyes. This, he thundered, is your Alpha. He hurled the body at Solara's feet. She screamed, scrambling backward, slipping in her mate's blood. And this, Kael growled, his voice echoing off the stone, is your king. Silence fell thick and suffocating. He had just rewritten history. He had erased his weakness, his near death, Nira's sacrifice, all buried beneath the legend of a king who could not fall. Nira's chest ached. The hope that had dared to bloom inside her crumbled. He was no different from the rest, proud, unyielding, untouchable. She was invisible again. Just the Omega. The great hall was a tomb. Outside, the blizzard's dying howl mingled with the wet gasps of Riven Duskbane's lifeless body, twitching on the stone floor. Blood and fear hung thick in the air. The entire Crimson Howl Pack stood motionless, their faces carved with terror. Kael Dravenmoor stood in the center of it all, bare-chested, slick with sweat and melting snow, a god of wrath. His amber eyes blazed with power. Solara Vaincrest lay at his feet, trembling. My king, she whimpered, crawling forward on her knees like a shattered doll. You see now the monster he was. He forced me, threatened my family. I am loyal, I swear it. You are a liar, Kael said simply. His voice was not loud, but it cut through her pleas like glass. He stepped closer, each stride the judgment of a god. You are treason made flesh. No, please, I'll serve you. I'll be your loyal Luna, she cried, grasping at the torn cloth around his waist. Kael looked down at her hand with such disgust, it was nearly tangible. You will serve as an example. He turned toward the two armored figures who had appeared at the doorway, Varric Thornwyn and Dane Voss, his guards. Take her back to the citadel, Kael ordered. She will stand trial for high treason. Let the world witness what becomes of a Luna who plots her king's death. No, Solara screamed as they seized her arms. The regal tone vanished, replaced by the primal panic of an animal caught in a snare. No, Nira. Tell him I was kind. But her screams were swallowed by the storm as they dragged her away. Kael's gaze shifted to Corvin Ashmark, who crouched against the wall, clutching his broken wrist, his eyes wide with dread. And you, Kael said quietly, walking toward him. My king. I was wrong, Corvin sobbed. Foolish, please. Mercy. You drew your blade on your king. Kael said, his tone smooth as steel. You sought to steal a crown through betrayal. And for that, he gestured toward the cleaning rags piled in the corner. Your title is stripped, your name erased. You are no longer Beta. You are Omega, now the lowest among them. You will serve in the Hvel. You will wear the rags. The words fell like a verdict carved into stone, final and absolute. You will eat last. Kael Dravenmoor said, his voice cold and final. You will speak to no one. and no one will speak to you. You will scrub these floors your father's blood until I decide your penance is done. Corvin. Buzambashmark, once the proud beta collapsed in on himself, a hollow weeping shell of the man he had been an hour ago. The hall was silent, too silent. Fear clung to the air like frost. Their alpha was dead. Their Luna was gone in chains. Their beta was nothing but a broken slave. What came next? Kael's gaze swept across the Crimson Howl Pack over a sea of bowed heads and trembling bodies. And then his eyes found her. Nira Wraithborne stood alone near the hearth, forgotten amid the carnage. She should have felt vindicated. Solara Vaincrest, who sent her to die, was now imprisoned. Corvin, who would have slit her throat, was crawling in disgrace. Riven Duskbane, the alpha who ordered it all, lay dead. She had won. So why did it feel so hollow? Because he had lied. The magnificent king, standing before them, majestic, unbreakable, had stolen her truth. He had twisted her courage into a footnote in his legend. The 6-mile crawl, the poison, the storm, all rewritten to make him untouchable. He had taken the one moment where her life mattered and erased it to preserve his throne. He was just like them. Another alpha, too proud to admit that a lowly omega had been his salvation. He had used her to survive and then buried her in silence. Her heart froze harder than any northern ice. Kael began walking toward her. The wolves parted instinctively, bowing as he passed. Every eye in the room followed him, waiting to see what he would do to the last loose end, the Omega who knew the truth. He stopped before her, a towering shadow of power and heat. She tilted her chin up, meeting his gaze not with submission, but with quiet defiance, the dead-eyed disappointment of betrayal. "You did not bow," he observed softly. "Should I, my king?" Nira whispered, her voice trembling with a grief so deep it bordered on fury. "Should I bow to the story you told, or the one you erased?" His amber eyes flickered, pain flashing beneath the steel. "You are angry. You lied." It wasn't shouted, but the words carried more weight than any roar. It was an accusation, and it was the death of what little trust had begun to bloom between them. "I did," Kael admitted, his voice low, roughened with something that wasn't quite regret. Why, she demanded, her voice breaking. After everything, why? He met her eyes, the storm outside mirrored in his own. "Because if they knew the truth," he murmured, "they would never fear me. A king who had to be carried 6 miles by a lone Omega is no king. He is prey." He glanced at the kneeling pack. A king. Nira is a story one held together by the illusion of power. If that illusion cracks the wolves at our borders, the Blood Veil sect, the outlaws you've never seen, they won't just attack. They'll consume everything. The lie I told wasn't for pride. It was to keep the North from tearing itself apart. It made sense, cruel, pragmatic sense. It was strategy, not vanity. But it still broke her heart. That story, he continued, softly stepping closer, was for them. His voice dropped to a whisper. "The truth is for us." He reached out and gently took her bandaged hands. His touch was impossibly careful. His eyes softened as he looked at the torn skin and blood-stained wraps. "The truth," Kael said quietly, "is that I was dead. The Silverbane burned my veins. The storm buried me. I had no illusions. I was a king dying alone on a frozen ridge." His gaze locked with hers. "And then I smelled you." Nira's breath caught. "It wasn't the shadow root that saved me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was you. Through the poison and the cold, I smelled pine after rain. I smelled a hearth fire I had never seen. I smelled defiance and mercy and the strength I'd forgotten existed in this world." His hand brushed his lips as he whispered, "I smelled what the moon goddess once promised me, the one thing I thought I'd never find. I smelled home." He drew a deep, shuddering breath. "I smelled my mate." Nira's world tilted. "No," she stammered. I'm an Omega. You're the king. "You're my fate," he countered, a faint, dangerous smile curving his lips. Then he took her hand publicly this time and pulled her to the center of the hall. Their fingers interlocked, his grip fierce and possessive. "For 20 years, Kael," roared his voice, filling the great hall, "I have ruled alone. For 20 years, I believed the moon goddess had forsaken me, but she had not. She was merely testing me." He turned his blazing gaze on Nira. "She hid my Luna in the one place no one would ever look. She gave her cruelty and called it a trial. She gave her weakness and she turned it into strength. She gave her my life, and she saved it." Now at last he told the truth, shaped into legend. "Your traitors left me to die," Kael said, his voice echoing like thunder. "And this wolf, this Omega, faced the storm. She fought the poison. She carried her king 6 miles through death and blizzard. She did not falter. She did not bend. She did not fail. And this time when the pack bowed, it was not just to their king. It was to her." He pulled her in one arm, wrapping around Nira Wraithborne's waist like forged steel, anchoring her to him in front of the entire hall. "The lie I told was for my enemies," Kael Dravenmoor said, voice low but powerful. "But the truth," his amber eyes burned into hers, "is for my pack." He turned to face the stunned wolves of the Crimson Howl Pack. "And the truth is, she is the strongest wolf I have ever known." His grip tightened. "And she is mine." Before Nira could even draw breath, Kael leaned down and marked her. His teeth pierced the skin at the base of her neck, right where shoulder met throat. The pain was sharp, electric. Then suddenly it exploded into something entirely otherworldly. Golden heat surged through her body, crashing like sunlight through her veins. Her wolf, once small, once quiet, rose up inside her. But it wasn't small now. It was sovereign. It was silver fire and moonlight fury. A queen. Their souls locked. Her strength folded into his. His power, his command, his legacy flooded her, and in turn he felt her the steel will that had carried him through 6 miles of death. A gasp rose across the hall, collective and shaken. The scent of a new royal mate bond filled the room like a storm surge. Every wolf smelled it. Every heart felt it. Kael lifted his head, the new mark dark and proud on Nira's pale skin. His voice thundered. "Your alpha is dead. Your Luna betrayed her king. Your pack is shattered." His hand lifted hers into the air. "But it will be reborn." The wind outside wailed like a warning, but inside the stone walls of the great hall the king's voice became law. "It will be rebuilt on loyalty. It will be ruled by the wolf who defines loyalty." His eyes swept over the sea of faces that had once looked down on her, balked her, starved her, spat at her feet. "Bow," Kael commanded, his voice, the voice of a storm made flesh. "Bow to your new Luna. Bow to Nira Wraithborne, Luna of the Crimson Howl Pack, and your future queen." One by one they obeyed. Wolves who had sneered, who had laughed at her hunger and weakness, now lowered their heads to the cold stone floor. Not out of habit, not out of fear, but because something had shifted. They had seen it. The Omega who had crawled through snow and blood. The girl who had carried their king. And now she wore her crown. And that is the story of how a so-called worthless Omega, armed with nothing but her defiance and spirit, faced down a deadly storm and a den of traitors and saved the man the moon goddess had always meant for her. Nira Wraithborne proved that true strength isn't about your title, your bloodline, or your power. It's about what you do when the world leaves you to die in the snow. She carried her king, and in return, he gave her a kingdom. What did you think of Nira's unforgettable journey? Was Kael Dravenmoor right to lie to protect the realm, or should he have told the pack the full truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your take. If you love this story of karma, courage, and fated mates, don't forget to like this video, share it with your favorite story lover, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another heart-racing tale. Thank you for listening.